Welcome to a special edition of Living Inside the Testimony. I'm here with my husband William on location in beautiful downtown Memphis, Tennessee, in front of the Orpheum Theater for the world movie premiere of The Grace Card.
We are here on the red carpet waiting for the stars to arrive. I hope we get to see Louis Gossett Jr.
I know, I hope we do too. I bet a lot of people are here to see Gossett. He plays Grandpa George in the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the other two main characters, the two police officers, Michael Joyner and Michael Higginbotham. Hopefully we'll get to see them on the red carpet as well. And then after the red carpet, we'll show you the movie trailer so you can see what all the hoopla is about. We'll go inside and watch the premiere, and then when we come out, we'll jump on the trolley, head down to the National Civil Rights Museum, and we'll get to talk to some of the people that are in the movie at the reception there. You'll get to see those interviews later, but for now, let's see what's happening on the red carpet. Let me just encourage you to go out and watch this fabulous movie at a theater near you. It's a story of redemption, reconciliation, faith, and of course, grace. It's more than simply a movie about racial conflict or a dramatic cop movie with a religious twist. It's a story of God's grace and the power of forgiveness. You can never underestimate the power of grace. The movie is about witnessing the power of forgiveness. Every day we have the opportunity to rebuild relationships and heal wounds by extending and receiving God's grace. As Grandpa George explains to Sam in one of the turning points in the movie, reconciliation starts with forgiveness. That's the only way to make a difference. Michael Joyner plays Mac McDonald, a police officer whose 5-year-old son was tragically killed. For the next 17 years, Mac is filled with bitterness and racism, and he allows his pain to erode his love for his family and leaves him angry with God and everyone else. He's a man tormented by the past and with no hope. He's living in a world where he desperately needs to discover the power of forgiveness and reconciliation. The other police officer has already come down the red carpet. His name is Michael Higginbotham. He plays Sam Wright, Mac's new patrol partner, who is also a part-time pastor at a small startup church. He's struggling between both worlds, being a police officer with a full-time salary, and what he really wants to do is to be a full-time pastor. And finally, our most decorated actor, Louis Gossett Jr. He plays Grandpa George, the voice of wisdom. He was a minister also and a civil rights activist. As the mentor, he shares the message behind the Grace Card with his grandson Sam. There's a hidden message written on a Grace Card that becomes one of the most poignant scenes in the entire movie, when Sam actually discovers the Grace Card itself from a handwritten note left in a Bible from the 1800s. You'll remember that Gossett won an Academy Award for an officer and a gentleman, and an Emmy for his role as Fiddler in the TV miniseries Roots. He recently released his autobiography, An Actor and a Gentleman. To go inside to watch the movie, but so you can see what all the excitement is over, here's a sneak peek at the movie trailer.
That car was speeding.
Lord, please don't let me kill my partner.
Why don't you, man? Just put us both out of our misery. You got in trouble again, didn't you?
We'll talk about this.
No, we'll talk about it now.
Blake.
Something going on at home?
Don't go preacher on me, man.
I'm not going preacher. I'm your friend.
I am alone. Been alone since I buried my first boy. It doesn't matter anymore.
I feel like I'm failing in what I was put on this earth to do. I want to make a difference, like you did.
You can never underestimate the power of grace.
We need an ambulance! Miss McDonald?
I want to think about the man's family. I was called to minister to people. That's what Mac's doing in my life, Deborah.
Show me what my heart really is.
So you thought
Just answer me this, Sam. What is there to believe in, man?
No, we in this together, man.
you do, so we think that you're good.
I promise to pray for you every day, ask your forgiveness, grant you the same, be your friend always. That is the grace card.
Reconciling starts with forgiveness. The only thing that's a difference.
I'm so sorry. Please tell me you forgive me.
The justice we need is grace.
The Grace Card. Come to theaters February 2011.
We just came out from watching the movie, and if you've read all of those rave reviews, I'm here to tell you, believe everything that you have seen about it. This movie is wonderful. Now we're going to jump on the trolley and head over to the reception and get a chance to talk to some of the people in the movie. I'm here with Michael Jordan, who plays Mac McDonald in the movie. People usually describe you as a comedian and an actor, but I heard that your first love really wasn't being a comedian, and that your pastor had asked you while you were getting ready to do a talent show if you would consider doing comedy. How did all of that come about?
Well, he knew me as a cut-up. I've been kind of the class clown all my life, which was good for making friends, but not good for making good grades. So he, knowing that I was a class clown, they needed someone to MC this talent show and do comedy, and I argued with him until he finally, I finally gave in. And you know how God is. You know how He gets us to get into our destiny. After I did it, I fell in love with comedy. Started doing it at churches, and then started doing it at colleges and corporate events where they need a clean comedian, and eventually it became a full-time living. So yeah, I've been doing comedy for 18 years.
So you went from not even thinking of yourself as a comedian to being nominated as Comedian of the Year in 2010.
That's right.
By the Christian Music Hall of Fame. And then you're also voted Hollywood's Improv funniest comic in LA in 2008.
Yes.
How do you go from not even thinking you're a comedian, I guess, from being that clown in class, it just leads to bigger and better things in the comedy world?
Yeah, you know, you work very hard at it. You got to pay your dues. I did a lot of comedy clubs for a while, a lot of road work where you don't make much money, just barely enough. And then when I was finally able to make enough money, that's when I met my beautiful wife, Michelle, and we got married. And we struggled, but I was still able to make a living. And then from that, I told her I'd always wanted to re-pursue my acting career. That's when we went to LA about 9 years ago. I studied with some acting coaches and still made a living as a comedian, and 8 years of auditions and getting a few roles. The economy kind of went sour. We moved back to Kansas City, and although I kind of kissed my career goodbye, something inside me told me God still had something. That's when I got the call from David Evans, the producer. He saw my acting reel online and decided then and there that I was the only person to play Mac McDonald. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was an incredible, miraculous story.
So you go from being this stand-up comic to this dramatic role, you know, totally opposite. You're a police officer in the movie with quite a few issues.
Yes.
Where does all that talent come from to make that leap from the comedy club to the big screen in a serious film like this, a Christian-based film? You know, we've seen other comedians make the switch. Jim Carrey went to...
Right, Robin Williams.
You're much more serious in this role. It's not a comedy. How do you make that switch from being a comedian to something so serious?
Well, thank you, first of all, for saying I have talent. I appreciate that.
Well, of course you do.
Well, thank you.
I saw the movie.
Well, here's what I found out about talent. You got to develop that potential, that talent. So that's why I believe God called us to L.A. for 8 years. I studied with some excellent acting teachers, the best in L.A. that I could find. Kevin Spacey's acting coach, I private coached with him, and several others, and really fine-tuned my acting technique and so on. So it's just like piano. You may see a person that has a lot of musical potential, but they still need to learn how to play that instrument one way or the other. So you take that talent and you combine it with studying and practice, and you combine it as a Christian. You combine it with prayer and following God, because He's the one who opened this door and made it happen for me.
On my talk show, I interview people who have testimonies to share about their journey of faith. And I think Matt McDonald would have a great testimony to share.
Yes, he
discovered his faith. What would he say? Because you made his character just seem so real, and I just didn't see the faith side of it at first in you, in that character. You make it seem so real. What do you think Mac would say to share his testimony of his discovery of faith?
Well, there's a line in the movie where Mike several times says, we're always saying no justice, no peace. But if my partner Mike, the character in the movie, I say Mike, if his character Sam had sought justice, and he would have been right in doing it. If he had went up to his boss and said, I like the way this man's treating me, I want him fired, we would have had a different ending in this movie. Instead, Michael extended grace and mercy and looked for a way to do the right thing, God's thing. And I believe there's a time for justice, there really is. But there's even more, just like God has shown the entire universe, there's more often than not a time for mercy and grace. And so my testimony would be, thank God for sending someone in my life who showed me grace when I did not deserve it whatsoever.
Well, I can tell you really got into that character role, because it's nothing like your real life. You're happily married.
Yeah, that's right.
Proud parents of 3 sons.
Yes.
The exact opposite of Mac. Was it difficult to make that transition into such a painful character?
You find other things that would bother you. Like I created a lot of stress for this character, a lot of hatred, and you try to. There's a lot more to it than this, but one way you can do it. For instance, I love Mike to death, Mike Higginbottom, who plays Sam, and to treat him like that, I had to forget who he was and how good of friends we are. So one way to do that is to find something else, not in that person, but in another person. Make him a different human being, and make maybe something else that you would hate about this person. What if it's this person sitting next to you? And you try to use that. That's one way to do it. But any actor, dramatic actor especially, you love the challenge. I hate to say it, but we love playing the bad guy more. We just love the bad guy, yeah. So we love that challenge, and it's especially good when a bad guy changes. That's all I'm going to say. When a change happens to that person, it's very powerful. So when I read the script, I was like, give it to me. I'm ready. And especially when you have a message. I mean, I was so ready to get into this.
Well, I can tell for sure that you really did change during the movie.
Yeah.
Because at one point I was kind of mad at you. I really didn't like that attitude.
That's good. That's how it's supposed to be.
You even made me laugh a little bit, even though it wasn't a comedy. You gave him a few looks that had me laughing, and you made me cry too. There was just so much in there. You changed from one thing to the other, and we see that transition and that growth with you. So I just like to congratulate you on that, and for teaching us the importance of reconciliation and the power of forgiveness. You did it very well, and I'm so glad
to be a part of it. Thank you so much. That's so nice of you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It means a lot to me.
Thank you. I'm here with Michael Higginbotham, who plays Sam Wright in the movie, and I'd just like to ask you your first question, because I think this is what all of us are dying to know. When you first moved to Memphis in 2000 and started pursuing your dream as an actor, did you ever envision that your big screen debut would be with someone like Louis Gossett Jr.?
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. I mean, it was just amazing because, actually when I got cast for the part, they said, we're working on somebody very big to play your grandfather. And the first choice, they were looking at a couple people.
Right.
And one of them was like Robert Guillaume Benson, you know.
Wow,
and I don't know if I was
that's
supposed to say that. And then the other one was Lou Gossett. And although they're both good actors, I was pushing for Lou Gossett.
Right.
I
Ain't nothing wrong with either one.
No, there's nothing wrong with either one. But if I can do either one, I was like Lou Gossett Jr. I loved it. It was great.
Oscar winner, Lou Gossett Jr.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, on my talk show, I interview people with testimonies to share about romance, love, faith, inspiration. And I think both Michael Higginbotham and Sam Wright probably have a testimony to share, something based on faith. You both have really remarkable testimonies. So coming from you, Michael, in the aviation industry, you're working in aviation, you're not a full-time actor. So you come home from work and you find out you're in this big film. What's that like? What would your testimony be about that?
You know what? I'm going to switch this up. See, because here's my testimony is that I no longer work in aviation. I've just stepped out on faith.
All right.
I just stepped out on faith. This is what I've been wanting to do for, at least the last 10, 11 years. So when I had this opportunity, this is a God thing, and I felt like, it was a tremendous blessing just to have my first movie, to be with an actor the caliber of Lou Gossett Jr. So it's what I wanted to do. I felt like you only live once, and I felt like I prayed about it, and I stepped out on faith, and I left my job. I've been in GE aviation for the last 6 years, and a lot of people were looking at me like, man, you make good money, what are you doing, and I just said, this is not what I want to do the rest of my life. So I stepped out on faith. I moved to Los Angeles about a month ago to really pursue acting full time, and I prayed about it, and I feel like this is where God's leading me to.
Wonderful.
Yep.
And then as for your character, Sam Wright, he also has a testimony to share.
Oh, definitely.
Loving family man, 2 beautiful children at home, beautiful wife.
Right.
And you're torn between 2 things.
Right. Yeah.
You want to be a pastor.
Right.
You're part-time pastor, full-time cop.
Right.
What would Sam's testimony be? How does he reconcile the difference in those 2 worlds?
It's strange that Sam's testimony is much like mine, a personal one, It's something that, he knows that he has to be a police officer in order to pay the bills, but at the same time, it's not what God's calling him to do. He doesn't believe. So he would rather be a pastor full-time. So just like me, it's something else he'd rather be doing, So that's his testimony. He knew that, I think that's where Lou Gossett Jr.'s character came in. Uncle George. It's Grandpa George. I'm sorry, I said Uncle Lou. I'm thinking about Uncle Lou, but Grandpa George. He's that positive mentor. He's like, look, you can't differentiate. You're not ready to lead the police force, and maybe that's what God would have you do. Maybe you're in the police force for a reason, because, like you said, God's ministry, Jesus' ministry, was in the streets.
Right.
So I think that he had to learn that he could do both. He didn't have to necessarily separate the 2. What he really wanted to do was to grow his congregation. And by him extending grace to the character Mac McDonald, people heard about it, and it grew his congregation. You saw the difference between the congregation at first to the end of the movie. So that's his testimony.
And as for the race reconciliation, that's a big theme in the movie. You moved here from Chicago, and you were in Memphis 10 or 11 years before I just found out you moved to L.A.
Right.
Memphis still has race issues here. How do you think Memphis will embrace the race issue, or is there any better city for this to be filmed in other than Memphis because of the racial history that we have here?
You know what? I think that it could be a positive tool in any city. I do think that it's needed here in Memphis. I mean, it's an apt time for it, especially when they're talking about the school districts merging and that sort of thing, and it's a lot of tension in the city. What I pray that the Grace Card would do is create a conversation between white and black. See, what happens is, in Memphis for too long, both races try to act like racial tension does not exist, and they want to try to hide it. What I want this to do is to create a conversation. Instead of trying to ignore the differences, let's embrace them, and let's try to find a common ground, and a place that we can start to meet and actually talk about race relations in the city.
So this movie really does help us realize that we have opportunities to rebuild relationships, heal deep wounds, extending and receiving God's grace. How does Sam do that in the movie, or how does he help Mac to do that in the movie?
you know what, to be honest, in the movie, it took a long time for him to reach through. You know, it was constant. You know, I think as a man of God that, you know, he constantly had to keep on trying to break through that barrier that Mac was putting up. And I think for the character, my character, Sam Wright, that he had to learn about Mac and about Mac's history in order for him to kind of understand a little bit better. So I think that once he learned about that, then he knew he had to be a little delicate with it. And, you know, he had 2 kids of his own. My character has 2 kids of his own. When the tragedy happens, he can relate to that.
Absolutely.
And I think that makes it easier for him to extend grace and extend, you know, he had to forgive him as well. You know what I mean? So I think that really the major thing of the movie is forgiveness. It's being able to forgive. And I think in order to move forward as a people, in a relationship, or in anything, you have to be able to forgive for the past. You know, Philippians 3:14 says, you know, I count not to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting the things which are behind and pressing forward for those which are before. That's what we have to do.
And that's what you've taught us in the movie. You've extended the grace card to all of us and shown us that through the power of forgiveness, reconciliation, receiving God's grace, and you just did a magnificent job. And then I just appreciate you for stopping by.
Thanks for having
me. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Good to have you. Thank you. The Grace Card is a vivid reminder that every day we have the opportunity to rebuild relationships and heal wounds by extending and receiving God's grace. The message behind the movie is that we all need to share the message written on the Grace Card itself. I promise to pray for you every day, ask your forgiveness, grant you the same, and be your friend always. There's no better way to live inside the testimony than by sharing the message on the Grace Card with others. It's all about God's grace and the power of forgiveness. So go watch the Grace Card and share the message with others that truly is living inside the testimony, a testimony of ultimate reconciliation and grace.